Hello, my name is Jimmy Eanes, and I'm Education Director for the International Erosion Control Association. If you are receiving this nice little YouTube, it's because we're wanting to provide some assistance as you prepare your course for EC 16 in San Antonio. We're very concerned about the quality of our education, and we know that you are too. And we've kind of gone on this track in the last 2 or 3 years at IECA to increase our quality. We've just been approved to be an ISET provider. If you're interested in ISET and what that means, you can go to iacet.org and take a look at what has happened to us and how we think that will bring value to our educational programs at IECA. But one of the things that we've learned along the way is that there's some tools that will help us become more effective instructors. And we know that most of our attendees do not speak for a living. Most of you are selling product or a service or working in some kind of regulatory component of the industry, but probably don't have an opportunity to speak. And so there are others of you that speak a lot, and this is probably going to be redundant. But for those of you that don't, we're trying to offer you some tools. And one of the things that we've learned along the way is there's a new acronym. Obviously, we love acronyms at IECA. And there's one that we want to talk about just in the next few minutes that will probably help you understand where we're going as an association and the direction we're taking when it comes to education to create a better product and increase the quality of our content. And we really hope that you take this seriously. The acronym is called ADDIE, ADDIE. And we're going to talk about this ADDIE model. We say, what the heck is ADDIE and why should I care? If you look at this nice little graphic, if you look at the top of the graphic, that's the first A of ADDIE, which is analyze. The next one is design, which would be on the right side. Under that on the bottom is development. And then the fourth one on the left is implementation, and in the middle there is evaluation. So there is your acronym: analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation. And quite frankly, that's the process that you will go through and that we go through when it comes to putting together content and making decisions about content for IECA, not only for our conference, but for everything that we do, IECA education. So what the heck is it? You know, to give you an idea, ADDIE is really just a model. It helps, I mean, the great thing about ADDIE is it helps you focus on the learner and not on you. The reality is the objective in all training is that your learners gain information and they can use that information in the field. So the ADDIE model is really helps you focus on the goals of your course. It allows you to focus on the learner's needs instead of your needs as an instructor. It also guides you in the design of your content and your training materials. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the design area of the ADDIE model. And then, of course, overall, everything is we want to see how effective you are. We evaluate your effectiveness. If you notice, I'll go back. In the middle of this graphic is the word evaluation. And the reason the E of ADDIE is in the middle is because we're always evaluating what we're doing. We want to make sure what we're doing is effective. So even when we're in the analysis mode, we're still evaluating. When we're designing, we're evaluating. When we're developing and implementing, we're evaluating. So evaluation is a continual process just to make sure that we're effective. So that is a key objective for the ADDIE model. ADDIE really was something that was implemented after the Cold War and after World War II by the U.S. military. They were obviously concerned about the effectiveness of their training programs, and so they implemented this model. You'll notice that today it's called actually Instructional Systems Design, ISD, but for the most part we kind of follow this ADDIE, and we'll be following it in the future in what we're trying to do in our education. But actually most of the current instructional design models that are out there and available in the workplace are some kind of spin-off or some kind of break-off, obviously, of this model. So let's look at the model. This is a prettier graphic of the model. As you see, evaluate is in the middle, but we're going to start with that red arrow to analyze, and then, of course, we move into design, and then develop, and then implementation of your course. So let's talk about the first acronym, the first part of that acronym, which is the A, or the analysis phase. When you're putting together your course, first of all, you want to know who's in the audience, who's your target audience. You know, what's their knowledge level? You know, how much interaction and what's their capacity to interact with your content? Are there specific needs related to those in your group of attendees? What's their knowledge level? Is there skill deficiencies? Is there something they may need to know that they don't know? And what skills do you want them to learn? What are the new things that you would like to see them accomplish as a result of attending your training? And of course, you know, what are the available delivery options and methods for transferring these new skills into the workplace? How can they implement what you've taught them? The worst thing that can happen is them to come into your class and realize that there's these great things that you are doing in the field, and there's a limited capacity to implement what you've taught them. So how can they transfer this information and use it in the field? And of course, what's the instructional setting? You know, what's going on in the classroom? Are there any aids that you might offer? Is there anything that they might be able to read? Is there some kind of self-study out there? So all of that is part of the analysis phase. And of course, then you want to know, you know, how do these skills connect to the intended audience? How do we take what we have in this content, and how do I connect it with the group of people that are in front of me? Are they capable of interacting with the material? And then, of course, these next three items are probably not related to what's going to go on in your classroom, AEC 16, but generally, if you have a longer timeline, you might be able to give content over an extended period. But obviously your timeline at EC 16 will be that 1 hour classroom or that full day course that you're teaching. Also, are there any constraints with the program? Is there a technology constraint? Well, we're hoping not. And obviously we want to make sure that you're able to give what you can give in that 1 hour or that half day or that full day class. Cost, obviously, that's not going to be a concern for you at EC 16 because we've already factored that into the registration fee. And are there any performance measures? Well, you'll not know that with most of the folks that attend your course because they'll go back to their businesses, and sometimes their bosses will want to know what did they learn and how do they implement, but you'll not be able to check that off and determine if they can and have implemented what you taught them. So there are some limitations, obviously, in this analysis phase. The next section gets into design. This is when you actually sit down and think through your content and what you're going to present. Obviously, the key thing is what's your knowledge level. Is this entry-level content or intermediate or advanced? In fact, we ask you that when you submit your abstract. What's the knowledge level? What should people know if they come into your course? So you need to factor that in when you think about how you put together your material. What are your learning objectives? One thing you'll find as we're going through this ISAT model, and as we proceed further into abstract submissions for the future conferences, is we're really wanting to know what are the learning objectives of your course. And the learning objectives need to focus on the learner and not on you. If you look at most of the learning objectives we receive at IECA, most of them say, student will learn, student will learn, student will learn. Well, how do you know they've learned? How can they demonstrate that they've learned what you've taught them? So there are learning objectives that you want to accomplish. You want to see them to be able to implement things that you've taught them in the classroom. And there are verbs that demonstrate learning objectives. You'll learn more about that if you look up you actually might want to Google the term Bloom's, B-L-O-O-M-S, Bloom's taxonomy. Just a longer word for picking your verb and determining what it is you want your folks to learn in the classroom. And then, are there steps to learning? Is there a process? Are there 3 things they must do, or 5 things they must do to be able to perform the task that you've given them? Maybe there's only 1 thing. But again, identify those steps. And then based on the time that you've given them, how long will it take to deliver this program? Now, obviously, you know, in your situation, you're dealing with an hour or half day or a full day. And so you have to pace your content. The last thing you want to do is still be in your introduction in the first 40 minutes of your hour and not be able to get your content. So you need to break down and pace your presentation. And so consider how much time you have in the design phase. Also, you need to know your participants. You say develop their participant assessments, the program evaluation methodology and data collection method, and report formats that they will be able to use to determine the mastery of the task. What are things that they must be able to do to demonstrate that they've mastered what you've taught them? And so how do you evaluate that in the classroom? A lot of times that's quite difficult for you to be able to determine whether they have mastered it. One thing that you might consider in the second bullet point is doing mini knowledge checks in your presentation. Somewhere in the middle of it, do a Q&A. Sometimes folks have loaded a software on their system where they ask a question to the class and people can actually text back the answer and give an answer back to the instructor, and the instructor can determine whether their class really understands the content. There are games that you can play. In fact, a lot of folks have determined there are games that can go on in the classroom. People love competitive learning. So how do I implement that and put that into my presentation? And of course, you review the implementation and the evaluation cost, and obviously that's something that'll be a little bit more difficult for you to do as an instructor. But you want to think in terms of, is this been beneficial, and are they getting the best bang for the buck? Are they getting what they paid for by coming to the conference? Again, that's part, believe it or not, of the design phase. And of course, then you get into that third phase, and this is where you're sitting down, and now for the best part, for most of us, it's sitting down and putting together our slides or developing our course. And so what activities will help me get this across to the audience? What's my delivery method? Unfortunately, most folks have chosen lecture. So it's talk for an hour, or talk for 3 hours, or talk for a full day. Believe it or not, you know, if you've been in any kind of classroom setting, if the instructor is doing all the talking and you're not being able to interact with the material, that's a rather boring option for those attending. So how will I deliver this? What will I do? What kind of activities will I implement in the classroom? Also, what kind of materials can I use? Are there any tools that we might be able to use? Are there learning aids or something that I can bring to the classroom to advance and develop the learning? How do I combine my courseware with, say, a video or this game that I might do? How can I do that in a way that's smooth and it falls right into the process of presentation? All of that happens in the development phase. And of course, you want to validate the material and the presentation to ensure it meets all the goals and objectives. In other words, your learning objectives. Are you meeting those, and is the material assisting? Because there's nothing worse than using material that has nothing to do with your learning objective. So again, you have to think about this as a whole. Another thing to consider in the development phase, again, are there trainer guides or their job aids? We've talked about that. But what if you bring someone into the classroom to assist? Do you have a co-teacher? Are you going to have a coach or a mentor or somebody in the classroom? How do you implement that into your development of your course? Now, the last two on this really are not things you need to worry about when it comes to the conference, but it's something that we worry about a lot at IECA, and that is the venue. Obviously, we've already chosen that venue, which is the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center in San Antonio, so you don't need to worry about that part. You don't need to worry about accommodations because we're going to be making sure that your attendees get a room. We obviously don't want them sleeping in the streets in San Antonio. And the travel arrangements, again, not your problem. But we will be the ones making sure that those things happen, and we will constantly remind attendees that you got to get there and you got to sleep there and you got to go to a meeting room. That's something we'll be concerned about. And of course, scheduling. Again, we will handle that registration. But that's something that goes on in the development phase on our end at IECA. Now, the last phase, and obviously the phase that you think about, is implementation. We're there, we're in the classroom. What do we do? Well, the first one is to set up and prepare the venue. Again, not something you are concerned about mainly because we have classrooms. We've set it up. We've given microphones where microphones are necessary, data projectors where data projectors are necessary, and all the necessary arrangements for the classroom to work. But if you have some kind of electronic gadget that doesn't work in the classroom, we might need to know about that, because if it's critical to your presentation, especially during this implementation phase, and it doesn't work, well, that doesn't help you at all. So make sure you bring the right connectors and the right type of attachments. So as we prepare and set up the room, you have the right electrical and software and whatever you might need to make what your presentation click. Also the learning environment, the room and the room setup. We're concerned about that. That's something we'll be working on. You will have a moderator in the classroom that will be there to introduce you. Also, that moderator will make sure the room is the proper temperature. We don't want it too cold. We don't want it too hot. Those of you who are teaching at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they've just eaten, and if they come into a warm room, they'll fall asleep on you. That's just the way things go. So we may cool it off a bit in the afternoon. That's something that we're concerned about. The next bullet point is a registration, instructional books. If you have handouts and materials that enhance your presentation, make sure they're effective and useful. If you're doing a full-day class, obviously you'll have a book. So we'll be working with you in December for you to get that together and send it to us. Equipment, computers, tools. Again, those are things that we've been talking about. But make sure they work. Get there early enough to make sure that you're ready to go and you've hooked up and able to present. And of course, the final thing that happens in the implementation phase is the training itself, the conducting of the session. So now you've seen the first 4 sections of ADDIE. The assessment, analysis that goes on in there, the design phase, the development of your course, and of course then I'm about to forget it anyway, the implementation. Wow. I can't even remember our own acronym, but that's the way it goes. Okay, the last one is evaluation. The evaluation phase. Now remember, you noticed that the graphic had evaluation in the middle. That means we're constantly evaluating. A lot of times we think about evaluation being a piece of paper that we hand out in the classroom after your course. And obviously we'll do that. That will happen. But, you know, what we're going to ask in that evaluation to your attendees is, was your presentation clear? Was it understandable? Did your instructor use examples and illustrations? Were they useful illustrations? Was the information that you gave relevant to the learner? Were you interesting? Were you boring? Did you use while you were presenting? Again, think about those things. Were you motivating as an instructor? Those are the kind of things that we will assess from the classroom. And how did you impact the learner? Did you have a positive impact? If you had a negative impact, you can bet that folks will write that down, and we will probably send that to you and give you suggestions for next year when you present for IECA. What could you do differently? Was there a presentation, a part of your presentation that was not so effective? Maybe that's something you want to extract from future presentations. And of course, of the material presented, what was the most important to the learner? What was something critical that they could take back and use in the field? What was least important? Believe it or not, a lot of times things that you think are so critical may not be so critical. I know a lot of instructors spend time talking about their personal experiences, and quite frankly, if your personal experience doesn't enhance the learning process, you might want to take out that 10 minutes of your presentation talking about what you did, because it's not a learning experience unless it's critical to the learning process. So there is ADDIE, a new little acronym that we've all learned. Hopefully you will be able to use this little presentation to assist as you get ready for EC16 and any other presentations that you might be doing in the future. A nice model to help you as you prepare for presenting content in the classroom in an effective manner so that your content has quality and that you can get a return, as it were, on your time and investment in the classroom. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in San Antonio in February.